It appears to me that most photographers, no matter what level they're at, are very good at recognising things in their photographs that aren't quite right after they've taken them. It could be that they've missed focus, the exposure's not quite right, or the composition just looks a little bit imbalanced. But the problem is, once we've recognised these things, it's often too late to go back and change them. So today I've come to Cowper's Cross, high on Ilkley Moor on the edge of the Yorkshire Dales National Park, to share with you a 5-step process that ultimately turns a critique of a photograph after we've taken it into a critique of what we see in front of the camera out in the field in real time. Step number 1 is intention. This is basically what we want people to get out of our photograph when they look at it. It could be that we want to create a sense of mood and atmosphere, or emphasise the size and scale of a subject. It could even just be down to the way that the light's hitting your subject, and you just want to show the scene off. My intention for my photograph of Cowper's Cross is to show off the size and scale of the structure and the amazing nature of how people actually dragged these huge blocks of stone to what is quite a remote location. I might also want to try and integrate some heavenly connotations and juxtapose those with the bleak surroundings. Having an intention for your photographs gives you an excellent building block for the 4 steps that are yet to come. Our second step is subject. Now, I think it's quite obvious what my subject is today, but it's useful to remember that subjects don't actually have to be specific structures. It can be something like an anomaly in a pattern or a vanishing point that leads the eye off into the distance. The main role of a subject is simply to slap people around the face when they look at your photograph and say, "Look at me." A good subject will always stand out from its surroundings, and it won't only draw your eye in and create impact, it should gravitate people's interest on your photograph, making them look at it for longer. Step number 3 is light. As photographers, we often forget that light is actually our medium. Without it, we wouldn't be able to take photographs at all. But yet I see so many photographers gravitating to a subject, snapping at it willy-nilly, without considering the type or direction of light. It just so happens that the light now is rather quite flat. In fact, it's just started to rain rather annoyingly. But when the sun was out, I was looking around the cross at the direction that the sun was coming from, trying to align my camera to highlight some of the textures on the stone and make sure that the shadow fell in exactly the right place. So instead of leading your eye out of the frame, it was gravitating your eye towards the centre and keeping the emphasis on the subject itself. Step number 4 is camera settings. Camera settings are what's going to help us to harness the light that we've just talked about. And your settings are going to depend on the light you have available and also your intent for your photograph. Because my intent for the photograph that I'm taking of the cross here is to create a bit of a heavenly connotation, then I thought it might be good to go with quite a shallow depth of field, which means opening my aperture pretty much as far as it will go, which on my camera that I'm using today is f3.5. Because it's a reasonably bright day and keeping my fingers crossed the sun might come out again in a moment, I'm keeping my ISO as low as it will go to get the most out of the detail and the least amount of noise that I can possibly get. So on my camera, that's 100. I'm then using my shutter speed to balance my exposure. My tried and tested way of doing that is by taking a spot light meter reading from the sky, which is often the brightest part of the scene, and then a spotlight meter reading from the ground, or at least a shadowy bit of ground, and then making an average of the two. What that's going to guarantee is that I don't overexpose the sky and I don't underexpose the shadowy ground. And hey presto, the sun's back out. I'm also using single point focus and focusing right on the front of the cross. In combination with that wide aperture creating the shallow depth of field, it's going to guarantee that my cross is well and truly in focus and the foreground and background fall out of focus, drawing the eye more to the subject and ultimately making it stand out more. Step number 5 is composition. So, we now have an intention for our photograph. We know what we want people to get out of it when they look at it. We've determined what our subject is, something that's going to stand out in our frame and say, look at me, and keep people's attention. We've understood the light that we've got available to us, the type of light that it is, and the direction that it's coming from. And we've also set our cameras so we can make the most of that light and make our subject stand out as much as it possibly can do. So now what we need to do is organise everything within our frame so it works together and makes our picture aesthetically pleasing. Believe it or not, we've already talked about composition twice already without even thinking about it. The first time was when we were talking about our subject, how it needs to stand out and be separate from everything else going on in the picture. And the second was when we were talking about light, thinking about the direction of the light and how we can position the shadow in the frame to not lead our eye out, but to gravitate it towards the centre of the frame, the ultimate place where we want people to look. Now all we have to do is just refine it a little bit, find the exact place in the frame where the cross sits best, and maybe breathe a little bit more of our intent into the picture by thinking about those heavenly connotations juxtaposed with the size and scale and bleakness of the landscape. The first compositional decision that I've made is to go with quite a wide angle lens. This is to help me emphasise the size, scale and also bleakness of the surrounding landscape. You'll also notice that the cross is facing ever so slightly right in the frame, so I've placed it just left of centre. The reason that I haven't placed it directly on the left-hand third is because there isn't really anything on the right-hand side balancing it out. So therefore keeping it reasonably close to the middle of the frame is going to, along with the help of the shadow which is being cast just slightly down right of the cross, is going to circulate your eye around that central area of the frame. I've also decided to drop my angle ever so slightly by pushing the camera downwards. Not only is this projecting the cross up above the horizon, so it's being isolated against the nice sky behind, but it's also emphasising some of that heavenly nature of the sky with that lovely line of cloud that's now billowing across the horizon at the other side of the valley. So this is my finished composition. And I really do feel like my intention that I set out with right at the very beginning has well and truly been met. I think the subject is really strong and it obviously stands out in the frame, gravitates your attention and says, look at me. I think the use of light is also good as well, from the direction that I've pointed the camera at to emphasise some of the textures and details within the stonework. How we've used the shadow to help direct the eye towards the centre of the frame, and how it creates contrast, not just within the cross, but also within the landscape beyond. The camera settings that I've used harness that light and also compress your vision. The low ISO doesn't create any unnecessary noise. The shutter speed helps us to not overexpose the sky and not underexpose the ground. And that shallow depth of field, by using the wide aperture, just draws your attention more towards the cross in compressing the focus within the foreground and background. And by focusing directly on the front of the cross, we guaranteed that that was going to be in focus, and that ultimately helps the eye to be drawn to it more. And in terms of composition, positioning the cross slightly left of centre, making use of its shape, but also balancing off the right-hand side, I think works really well. lowering the angle to project the cross up above the horizon line, emphasising the size, scale and width of the landscape, and also that dramatic sky, adds to that intent that I was trying to achieve, showing off the bleakness of the landscape, the size and scale of the cross, but also that heavenly nature as well. And the great thing is that all of these decisions were made out in the field whilst making the photograph. So I can now be safe in the knowledge that when I look back at this photograph after I've taken it, I'm not going to be met with any nasty surprises, because all of the bases have been covered already. Don't get me wrong, learning how to positively critique photographs after they've been taken is not a bad skill to have. But I hope this video has gone to show that if we can learn to critique what's in front of the camera out in the field whilst we're photographing it, then we might just find ourselves saving time, money, and maybe a little bit more space on our memory card for more well thought out, intentional photographs. To learn more about the composition techniques that I've practiced in this video, then check out this one next. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment and all that jazz, and check out the link in the description to my in-person workshops, where you could be joining me in an inspirational location just like this to take your photography to the next level. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.